tariff pause may not end in 90 days. The reciprocal tariffs were announced on April 2nd, called Liberation Day, and officially came into effect on April 9th. But shortly after, the bond market crashed, and on the very same day, President Trump announced a 90-day pause on the tariffs. This pause applies to all countries except China and some targeted sectors. As of now, a 10% base tariff remains in place across the board. But here's the problem. Negotiations with Japan and India are moving painfully slow. At this pace, it's hard to see how any meaningful progress will happen before June 9th. Let's break down what's really going on. First, a quick disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing here should be taken as financial advice. What you're about to hear is my personal view, based on research, experience, and market observation. Always do your own research before making any trading or investment decisions. Welcome to Markets and Global Trends. U.S.-Japan tariff negotiations. Let's begin with Japan, one of America's largest trading partners and a country with deep-rooted ties to the U.S. economy. But when it comes to tariffs, things aren't moving smoothly. The ongoing negotiations between the United States and Japan have been anything but fast. From the start, the tone has been measured and cautious. Behind closed doors, sources say both sides are struggling to find common ground. While the US has made it clear they want a quick, streamlined deal, Japan is not playing along. Japan's top negotiator, Ryosei Akazawa, made that clear after high-level talks in Washington, stating, "A quick deal will not be made. Bridging the gap between both sides will require more time." That's a direct acknowledgement of just how wide the gap really is. And the message from Tokyo is consistent. Even Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba said, "These negotiations will not be easy." Japanese officials are reportedly frustrated with what they describe as vague or shifting demands from the US side. Instead of a clear set of proposals, they're dealing with changing priorities and last-minute revisions. In response, Japan is exploring ways to gain leverage. One area being closely watched is the automotive sector, a major pillar of Japan's economy and a constant flashpoint in trade talks. Japan may offer regulatory easing at home, hoping to sweeten the deal, but they've also made it clear they're not signing anything that doesn't respect existing agreements or undermine Japanese industries. Right now, there's no official framework, no draft agreement, and no timeline, just a cautious continuation of talks, and a growing sense that this could drag on well beyond the 90-day window. US or India tariff negotiations. Now let's turn to India, the world's fifth largest economy and a growing strategic partner for the United States. Unlike Japan, India has adopted a more engaged and optimistic tone. But optimism doesn't mean speed. The US and India have officially agreed on a terms of reference, a diplomatic way of saying they've outlined what they want to talk about. But here's the catch. There's still no binding timeline, and in trade diplomacy, that usually means delays. During his visit to Delhi, US Vice President J.D. Vance acknowledged the progress, but also underlined the unresolved issues. He said, "We welcome the progress, but India must address non-tariff barriers." These non-tariff barriers, like import licensing, subsidies, and compliance costs, are notoriously difficult to resolve. And they cut deep into some of the sectors the US wants access to, like agriculture, medical devices, and tech. Indian officials have suggested that a first-phase agreement could be in place by the end of the year. That's a full 6 months after the current 90-day tariff pause expires. So while India is showing willingness, the reality is, this is going to be a long process. India's tariff structure is among the highest globally, and any attempt to lower them must go through domestic political channels, industry lobbying, and legal reforms, and that takes time, coordination, and risk. In short, India wants a deal, but not at the cost of economic disruption or political backlash at home. Market reaction. Now let's talk about the market. Because in this game, it's not just governments watching, it's millions of investors with skin in the game. The clock is ticking. The tariff pause, announced after the bond market nearly buckled, is set to expire on July 9th. And if no agreement is in place by then, the US could unleash a second wave of reciprocal tariffs, 24% for Japan, 26% for India. That's not just a policy shift, that's a market earthquake. But here's the real dilemma. Push too hard, too fast, and we end up with a rushed, shaky deal. One that's full of ambiguous commitments and legal loopholes. One that unravels the moment politics shift or administrations change. Trade experts are already waving the caution flag. Expecting comprehensive agreements within 90 days is unrealistic. And they're not wrong. Historically, trade deals like these, deals that touch everything from agriculture to automobiles, from e-commerce to intellectual property, take a year or more to negotiate. So while headlines scream about urgency, the reality is, markets hate uncertainty more than they hate tariffs. And this prolonged ambiguity, it's breeding volatility. Conclusion. So where do we stand? What started as a bold attempt to recalibrate global trade has turned into a diplomatic chess match, one with no quick checkmate in sight. The United States began negotiations with Japan and India to avoid a tariff escalation spiral. But now, the talks are bogged down in bureaucracy, policy hurdles, and strategic hesitation. From Tokyo to New Delhi, one thing is clear. These negotiations aren't ending in 90 days. Ryoshi Akazawa says it'll take time. J.D. Vance says there are still barriers, and the silence from other partners, like China and the Eurozone, speaks volumes. They haven't even entered the room yet. The 90-day tariff pause, meant to offer breathing space, now looks like a temporary truce, not a path to resolution. And the threat of higher tariffs still looms like a storm cloud. For businesses trying to plan ahead and markets trying to stay steady, this means one thing: more delays, more volatility, more uncertainty. And as we approach July, no one really knows what comes next.